to basically be to talk a little bit about what my goal is going to be to basically do a little bit of this initial testing, so to speak, to see if we can build something that solves the particular issue that we're trying to solve. So, very first thing I'm going to do, and this is more to show this as a feature than anything else, because this is available to us on the Z-Core side of the house. I'm going to go ahead and just create a new repository, and let's call this Agentic Con. I've been using Agentic a lot lately. Con. Okay. So the description is basically a GPT like an open AI like API via Kong that API mock via Kong that we can use as a starter using Kong Gateway and managers. Okay. So essentially, with this change in UI, I'm assuming that this is going to come from up here. So we're going to have to sort of work in this mode up here. So we're going to create the repo, and then go from there. We're not going to make it a public repo. We're going to make it a private repo. Let's just create it and see if we can get. Okay, cool. And then here we're going to go into assistive, and then this assistive space here, we're going to basically see if it'll allow me to do the exact thing that I was hoping it would do before. All right, cool. Yeah, they just changed the UI. That's fine. I've got. Am I in the right space? Yeah. Okay. Agentic. Okay. Cool. So this is. I wanted to kind of show you guys GitHub's own version of all of their stuff or whatever. I'm gonna just use the Claude Haiku one for right now.
I have not seen this. This is pretty cool. Thanks.
Yeah. So it used to be that when you would create a repository, it would give you the option at the bottom of the repository to basically kick off the repository with a call. So before the repository was even created, like you already had you already had everything that you wanted in there, right? And it looks like they've changed the UI, which is why I got confused. Apologies. But essentially the goal here is going to be to basically do this. We have Kong Gateway, which is what I've used in the past. It's what runs api.va.gov right now. And there's also a sub Kong Gateway that runs the health API. And so you can do Kong in like layers, right? Like you can have a Kong instance that sort of manages the top layer, and you can do like sub instances that manage all of the subdirectories and that kind of thing. And so then what we have here is the tool that we're going to use. Now, this particular version of Kong is only at 3.9. The manager that I want to use is at. This is the open source manager. It's only up to 3.4 plus. So I'm hoping that that means 3.9 will work with it. We'll see. I will play around with it. But the goal here is to basically create a Kong gateway and Kong manager set of instances within a Terraform that I can deploy locally to my home server that will work together or work side by side and connect to one another. And the configuration within the Kong gateway is going to be to create a mocked OpenAPI spec, right? So if you've ever used the OpenAPI or OpenAI API, it basically has a specification. You can download the specification. You can run the specification. I've done recreations of the specification on other projects and stuff like that. The reasoning behind this, and this is where I think it's important to kind of think creatively when doing these sorts of projects, is this particular organization that we're doing this for. They just want to be able to have GPT-like experiences or expectations, but without necessarily needing to go to OpenAI, right? So they want to be able to use the same tools. They want to be able to use VS Code to do code completion through their API. They want to be able to use, like the agentic stuff on VS Code and stuff like that. We want to be able to use those tools within that organization as well. And so the goal here is to basically recreate OpenAI's API from within that ecosystem so that people can reuse the same tools and just modify the API address location when they do so. Does that kind of make sense? Is everybody kind of on the same boat and kind of understand what I'm describing here?
Yeah, we're just
Yeah, so
duplicating their API.
Exactly. So we're just replicating their API within the Kong ecosystem. So we're doing it as a mock API for now, in terms of just making sure that we get to something that we can demo essentially on day one of that project. And then we're instituting managers so that they can see that all the things that we talked about during the contract proposal process is Kong Gateway. We want to implement the manager, and we want to use mock references. And the goal here is that those mock references can then be reinstituted to point to whatever their actual API endpoints are, right? Whatever their model endpoints are, and so forth. It can basically be just pointed in those general directions. So they don't have to necessarily change their infrastructure. We can just basically give them a new API for everybody to hit, and they can manage all of their API keys and all of their stuff accordingly within the actual manager for the gateway. Does that
so
make sense?
just clarifying it, so it just sounds like we're making a shim layer effectively, right?
Pretty much, yes, exactly.
So
we're making sure
I'm looking into some things on my end. I just need to verify stuff before I make suggestions. But I'll
that's fine.
I'll
That's
reach
fine.
out later.
Feel free to interrupt, make whatever suggestions you deem might be necessary. Okay. So starting off, let's kind of explain what it is that we're trying to build. So we're basically saying create a Terraform deploy the Terraform based deploy repo that can deploy Kong Gateway and Kong Manager as a let's just say as a Docker container for now to a local server via IP, and instead of using the standard Docker, well, actually, forget it. Let's let them use the actual standard Docker containers because I don't want to have to deal with Docker security layer shit. Okay, so Docker container for now to a local server via IP, and the default Kong gateway configurations should mimic the OpenAI API spec in a mock state so that we can demo making fake AI related calls and getting fake AI related responses. Okay, so
Real quick.
yeah, go
So
ahead.
for this shim layer, we want to emulate the Open API, probably V1 spec. I would assume that's pretty standard. Um, do we want to support any additional routes, and what is the specialization of our feature set that differentiates it from just hitting OpenAI's API? Like, are we doing any kind of memoization? Are we doing any kind of retrieval context, anything like that?
No, I think the strategy here is going to be to just have something that we can demo and show the capability of using the manager, and that's probably something that I should add on here, using the manager to do things like issue the keys and so forth and so on. The current organization that we're talking about, and I'm not mentioning it here on the call in case this video ends up in the wrong hands. But essentially, the current organization that we're talking about is the one that I've been mentioning. They're not allowed to use OpenAI, right? Like they're not allowed to just connect directly to OpenAI's APIs. but they want to be able to use the tools and the utilities that do connect to OpenAI's tooling process, right? They want to be able to use the same SDKs. They want to be able to use the same tooling, the same everything. If that makes sense. And so our goal here is to create something that kind of shows off the ability to mimic that in some way, shape, or form. And then if we have enough time, maybe get it to a point where I can connect. I don't know if we're gonna have time for that, but basically be able to connect, say, VS Code directly to it and get the fake or false responses back. And the idea here is to show the ability to build compatible APIs that are sort of reverse engineered, and then they have their own API layer that is doing all of their model stuff right now. And so our goal is to basically use the shim, as you refer to it, as to basically connect to their internal API, for the purpose of giving them all of the features that their current API lacks or doesn't have. Eventually, we'll use Kong to build proper paths and, like you said, build optimization approaches and so forth. But because we only have the 2 to 3 month window, my biggest concern right now is just direct compatibility. So being able to prove and show direct compatibility with existing tools, and existing SDKs, and then we can kind of, once the contract starts, we'll be able to see behind the curtain and actually see how all their stuff is configured, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So to clarify, so what it sounds like is we just want to give them access to a closed model that they can use that's FedRAMP. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Closed model that is compatible to via API to OpenAI, and that they can use internally within their organization. Exactly.
So
do you remember Open Tibia? Where you had like an
yeah,
Open
no,
Tibia server?
I get what's going on. I'm just wondering
Yeah.
why we're not using a foundation model on Bedrock, because that's automatically V1 spec and we don't have to really build much of anything.
Well, so the organization wants the flexibility to be able to move between, whether it's AWS Bedrock um, or Google. They want to be able to move around between different providers potentially in the future. And so by offering them the Kong Gateway and Kong Manager approach, we're sort of giving them the flexibility to go in any direction without necessarily being tied to, like, my assumption is that their current, I believe their current implementation is in Azure, right? And so my assumption is that they're going to stay put with their current implementation. It probably mimics it pretty well. I don't know. There's a lot of the unknown unknowns in terms of how their stuff is built on their side. So knowing that there's not much information that we can get until that contract is finalized and signed, my goal here is to basically build something that will work in retrospective of what their plans have been or will be in the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it then that kind of reframes it well, because then what we're
Yeah.
building is kind of a proxy or a routing service.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Sorry,
Yeah.
before
No,
we
no,
get
no.
into it, I
This
like to
this
make
is exactly
sure.
the kind of questions that I'm hoping to get from everybody. Okay, so then so let me add here, configure Kong Manager to allow easy configuration for adding new users and controlling logs of usage when possible. Kong Manager might not be the best log tool for this, but we can always tack something on. But there used to be a really cool tool called Kong UI, which did both managing and logging, but I don't know enough about Kong Manager to be able to determine. So let's go ahead and let this work. So the idea here is basically to both show off what GitHub already has built in, so y'all can play around with it. Y'all can kind of get a sense of what GitHub can do already, and it's already included. If you pay for GitHub, it's already included in a lot of their bundles and accounts and everything else. So I'm assuming it's still going, right? Man, they've changed the UI so much. This is why it's bad demoing things that you're not as familiar with. Yeah, for context, I only ever really use GitHub creation piece for actually creating the repositories. So let's see if this crashes on me or actually does what it's supposed to do. So while we're waiting on this step to process, it's doing it. Man, they really added this bullshit. You have to allow every single file. So it did not used to be like this. This is what happens when somebody changes a good thing. How do you guys like the music selection?
I'll be honest, I don't think we hear anything. So.
Yeah, your
Oh,
microphone's
okay,
canceling
shoot.
it out. Don't worry about it.
Case, no, in that case,
Yeah, it's probably not a concern.
All right, I'll turn it off then. Yeah, this whole need to like click everything and approve everything is bullshit. And it like stops right there. That is not good. GitHub. I need to reach out to Phil. So do you guys remember Phil from Oddball?
No.
So Phil was one of the engineering managers when I first joined, and he's at GitHub right now. And I always give him shit anytime GitHub does anything stupid.
Nice.
That's an awesome way to go about that. That is one advantage to being a dev is you meet people everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. I think the problem that I'm seeing here with this tool is that it's I don't think this was I don't think that this was fully tested and vetted by people that actually do this kind of work. I think this feels like something an intern had to recreate. Yeah, see, like it pauses. It says it's doing something, but then it fails to continue.
It looks a lot like a skin variant of Open Web UI.
Yeah,
And when it's failing, it's probably just failing to hit like their backend services.
yeah. And my guess is that they don't have any sort of error correcting that like or retries or of any sort. That's the
Do you
last
see
time
anything in
I'm gonna use this
the
tool.
do you see anything in the inspector? Just out of
Nope.
curiosity.
Where's the inspector?
I mean Windows like Control Shift I. My fingers
No,
know
no.
what's
This
going
is
on there.
this is all in Web UI. All right. So that didn't work. So let's change course. Let's go to I'm gonna stop sharing real quick. Let's try to go and do this with Codex instead. Hold on. Second here. I'm gonna grab the prompt that I wrote. Codex. Kong. And let's try that. Let me reshare real quick. All right. So let's try it. Let's try it from this side of the house. I'm wondering if I think you're right about the Open Web UI thing, or at the very least, there isn't any way to see the errors. Like one of the things I like about Codex specifically is you have sort of the terminal screen in front of you. You can see what it's doing. GitHub sort of doesn't even, not necessarily they don't even have that. Like they don't even think about that as being necessary. Which for a platform that is focused, you would think that they would have it. So let me
I mean, the reality is probably not a misconfiguration of your service. They're probably just having backend issues right now. So even if we had errors, I'm
could
not
be,
sure there's much we could do.
could be, could also be the model. I don't use Claude all that much. Let me do this. Let me switch to something else. Oh, should we do Grok? Let's do Grok. Let's see. Let's see.
Rock it
Let's
up.
see. Oh no, it won't let me do. It won't let me pick it.
I've
Won't
never
let
I've
me
never
pick.
tried GPT-5 Mini. Have you practiced that? Is it getting good?
I've used it rarely. I usually use. I don't use the minis all that often, primarily because they're fast, but they're not as detailed usually. So all
At
right,
this point, I'm asking GPT-5 to thinking how to make spaghetti. This is what I use now.
oh no, I mean I'm doing some fun stuff, right? Like if I go, I go here and I go under. So this was my attempt to make my own version of Codex, and uh, I also had a where is it? This is a oh, so the reason all these are above my existing code is this is the stuff that I mentioned to you guys earlier, where I'm doing essentially repositories that are self-updating themselves, if that makes sense. And so like if you go under this is the one that we just created. You go under here. So I'm just
And I
talking
didn't
about this
know.
while we're waiting for this to load. I'm just kind of
Yeah,
talking
no, I
about
mean,
this.
what I think is really cool here. I didn't know you were a deacon. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right,
And
I've got
so
to be on better behavior now, apparently.
I still find myself cursing. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Okay. So as an example here, if I go under pull requests for this particular application, um, you can see here these were all kind of merged by the Pendabot, right? Or by GitHub Actions, essentially. So this is part of my I have 30 repositories that are self-updating and constantly self-correcting and self-fixing so that I retain as little, you know, technical debt as I possibly can because I have testing and coverage and everything on all of these repositories. The downside is that obviously when it can't update it, like when it fails, I have to go in and kind of figure out what the hell, like why are all of these failing for all of these and kind of work them one by one. That's like a weekend thing that I usually tackle. All right. So then if I go down here, the reason I brought this up, still gone. The reason I brought this up is I did work on the benchmark. So benchmark, part of me playing around a little bit with coder models, open source coder models specifically, is my attempt to basically create a benchmarking tool or way to benchmark existing coder models to see how good they are at the different languages. And so, as an example, here's one benchmark that I ran on my Windows machine. It's a Intel Core i7, 8 cores, 16 gigs of memory roughly. It's an NVIDIA GeForce NX 150. And you can see here that I was only able to get through, because it's only 16 gigs, so I was only able to get through the first maybe five or so coder models. But you can see here, Star Coder got a 21.5 score. And I kind of break it down by the language itself, right? So you can kind of see here, I'm a Ruby guy, so I like to see where the Ruby numbers fall, but you can kind of see Python. We use a lot of Dart, so this tells me that Star Coder is probably good for coding things within Dart. On my Mac OS system, which is 16 core, 64 gigabytes, and that's a Core i9. That's old school Mac, obviously Core i9. You can see here that it's got an AMD Radeon Pro 5500 plus an AMD Radeon RX 6800 XT. That's the eGPU that my MacBook is connected to. And you can see here that I was able to get through a whole lot more of these models and was able to rank them a whole lot more. But StarCoder still kind of came up on top, right? Like it's still like it's giving me and at this scale, it's giving me much higher numbers. But I actually think that's a different version. That's the 1B. Yeah, okay, it's the same version.
Is
So-
higher better? Sorry to interrupt you. Like, is a larger number? Like,
Not always, because like you can see here that for Ruby on 16 gigs, probably should have just talked about this stuff. On 16 gigs here, we have Ruby getting a score of 24, right? And keep in mind, this is non-deterministic because it's just running benchmarks based on testing each of the languages separately. But the 1B here got a 23 on Ruby, while here the Ruby got a 40, right? And so that's kind of important to point out that it can the models can function differently depending on this just the size of the capacity. How much GPU capacity do you have? How much RAM do you have? Like that really matters in terms of the overall model's ability to outperform in certain languages and in certain environments. So like yeah, compute inference needs as much VRAM as possible. Like that in my mind like solidifies that kind of proves the stake here. Let me check back on this. See, okay, here we go. Let's go back
I
to
mean,
what we were working.
the only nuance I would say to that is quantized models. And then your trade-off is basically, do you want it to be a little smarter and use significantly more time? And oftentimes I actually find I do. Just the smartest model winds up saving me more time in the long run, even if it is slower in its responses. But there are a lot of cases where you need faster answers.
Yeah, no, I agree. And faster answers don't necessarily mean correct answers, right? Like that's been my experience. Why is this crashing on me? Wait a bit. All right, so interesting. This repository had nothing on it. So the fact that now I'm actually getting a diff means that the GitHub stuff did save to the repository, but it did not complete itself, right? It appears that it did save something to the repository, but it did not finish itself up, did not complete itself up. So I find that really interesting. So let me take a look at. So feel free to check this out later on if you guys want to play around with it. Like if you have stronger GPUs, please feel free to run it. And I have the whole methodology written out here in terms of like what my approach is, what my scoring approach is, and everything. And then the actual tests themselves are in, I think they're in scenarios. Yeah, so you can see here all the different test scenarios for all the different languages. And it just basically tests certain concurrent queues, binary parse, LRU cache, etc. to really test whether or not the language is going to, or the model is going to return accuracy in terms of language implementation. And they're not all that good. And again, the better inference you have, the better the results, in my opinion. All right. So let's go back to here. And let's go to the agentic RFI stuff. Let's check it out. Agentic com stuff, sorry. Okay, so it did create stuff, but it just didn't finish. Good. Let's create a PR. Here's the thing that I hate about Codex. I have the app installed, but in a hurry, I didn't put it on. All right, let's go ahead and create the PR. Where are we at on time? 8:37. All right. Let's see here. All right, it's a decent starting point. I'm gonna merge this and then look through the entire code to make sure I understand what it is that both models do. All right, so it looks like it created the scripts Kong.config.sh. It didn't create it in the way that I expected for a Terraform script. I was expecting an infrastructure directory on here, but I may have to move it around. Let's take a look at the main.terraform. It's pulling from the Docker. It's doing Postgres for the Kong gateway stuff. I think Kong gateway is developed in Lua, and Kong manager is developed in Node.
I'm just
Yeah,
gonna
okay,
say, I
yeah,
did a lot of Terraform work with GPT 2 and 3,
yeah,
and the difference, the daylight between 3 and 5 is just unreal.
yes,
It's a
yes.
completely different thing.
I agree. I agree. So it looks like Kong gateway is written in Lua, which is not a bad thing. Lua is also what I think they wrote Elasticsearch in. And this is all TypeScript. Okay, cool. So there we go. Going back to here. All right. So we have something. Question is whether it's going to be any good. All right, and then the instructions are basically saying to copy the example. Cool. To the terraform.tvrs. I expected terraform init, terraform apply pool. I need to give it an IP address. It's going to basically do v1 models, v1 chat completion, completion, and embeddings, which is really all we need at this point. It's giving me a demo API key, which is cool. And I should be able to hit it. Okay, let's give this a try, shall we? And y'all feel free to pull this down. Oh, I didn't make it public. Sorry. Give me 1 second. I got to move this over to the Z core side of the house. So let me share the URL. Here. Y'all feel free to pull it down and play around with it as well. I'm gonna try to get it deployed to my local server. So give me a second. I'm gonna stop sharing real quick, and because I need to pull up my stuff here. Need to clone my repo. Uh, and con cool. Open up the editor, which is Antigravity, and then I'll share my screen with for Antigravity. Where is it? Okay, Agentic Hour. Here we go. Cool. Okay. Let me bring all this shit down. Move this out of the way. All right. So if I followed the instructions correctly, let me make sure I still have SSH access to my local machine. SSH 2.168.86.66. Yeah, okay, still cool. All right, and then let's see. Let's just do this for the instructions. Terraform init. Let it install dependencies, see if something fails. And you guys can see here that my configurations for anti-gravity are basically set up to run fast, meaning I want it to just implement it. I don't want it to just tell me what it's going to implement. And I have it set to Gemini 3 Pro High. Okay, cool. Then how does it know where how does it know where to deploy it? Local server IP, here we go. 192.168.86.66 on my network. That's weird. All right. Okay. All right, let's try Terraform deploy, see what fails. This is basically how I got my kids' Rust server working. Oh, why? I basically started down the pathway of like, all right, I want to just have a Terraform provider that basically deploys, and then I went through this kind of shit. Uh, see what let's see what I missed. Now you can just do like a click to send from terminal, like click the chat right here. I find that it doesn't always get because I need to update it. Son of a bitch. All right, give me 1 second here, guys. I'm gonna unshare and update my Antigravity real quick. Oh, this is what I get for not using this machine as often.
You're good. No problem.
So thoughts. While I'm waiting for this thing to update, I want to kind of get your thoughts, thoughts on obviously the GitHub stuff did not do what it was supposed to. We were sort of saved at the end by Codex reading through what GitHub tried to do and failed at, and then sort of fixing it. We're still running into a failure error right now. It's asking me to log into Google. Great. But I want to hear your thoughts while I'm waiting on this to let me back in.
I I would just say, I mean, yeah, okay, so there were hiccups. I mean, that's development, stuff
Yeah.
happens. Um, Obviously it's a very, very fast moving industry. Everybody is, I think, at this point very well aware of that. So things change, and I would say that it does reflect we probably spend more time getting used to ever changing tools than even the core development itself anymore.
Yeah.
So I feel like it was probably a good reflection of reality on the ground. But in the short window of time where we were actually able to get things running and working as they should, a lot was produced. Things
Yeah.
that would have taken days of actual dev work before.
Yeah. Exactly. Like the fact that the GitHub side of the house even got it kicked off and started and allowed the codex to sort of pick up where it left off is sort of a good thing. Like I agree with you there. It's sort of an interesting and good approach. Interesting. Restart policy needs to change. So with that being said, I have this theory I have a CTOs group that I've been a part of for many years. I actually had invited Rob over to join it back when I first joined Oddball, and he's in there as well. And I find it really interesting when a lot of engineering managers and higher level engineering folks talk about how do we centralize, how do we automate this process? Like basically, how do we get everybody on the same page? And I find myself having done this since 2022. Let's try that. I find myself sort of at a state where one failure is better than two. I find myself sort of at a state where I'm kind of bucking against the conventional wisdom that hey, like we like there needs to be standardization, and I'm like I don't think we're going to get standardization. I think if you standardize too early, you're going to sort of either be locked into an ecosystem that is going to get ever more expensive, right? Like everybody is talking about spec driven development, and everybody's talking about different ways to do it and which way is the better way. And as a Linux developer for a better part of a decade, when everybody else was on Mac OS, I know from personal experience there is no such thing as the better way. Like the better way just doesn't exist. It's whatever way you can get it to work to get it into production at the end of the day, right? And so I generally tend to have more of the opinion that if you try to standardize now, you're going to miss changes to the ecosystem that are going to move faster than your ability to get the standardization out to your people, right? Docker. Docker wasn't started. Huh. Missed that one. That's why it was failing. My Docker wasn't started. But it shouldn't be loading Docker on my local. That's weird. All right, I know we're getting close to on time, so let me try to run a play again. Oh, okay. Yes. Let's see what it does. But essentially, I think that like standardizing too early is going to cause you problems, right? Like actually, I posted something about this on LinkedIn. We're just probably going to run into more of these errors as we go. So just a heads up.
I
gonna be
thought
just
about
a-
MCP, but I went against MCP because we didn't have any specialized tooling or anything like that we seemed oriented on. Just
Well,
to what Steven's saying.
I think MCP is like what I mean, I haven't really used it, so I might be full of poop, but MCP might be one of those things that you're talking about, Bastos, where people try to standardize too early.
Yep,
And
exactly.
then
Yeah.
tools like
Yeah.
Claude Code and Gemini came out. And it's like, we don't even really need that. But
Yep.
anyways.
No, and I
mean,
think everybody
it-
wants to standardize because everybody wants to be able to claim that they created the standard. Like it's not even that they're standardizing for the sake of making it easy. They're standardizing it so that they can basically say, hey, like Anthropic standardized MCP because they can say, hey, we own this ecosystem now. We own the MCP ecosystem. And the joke that everybody always kept coming out with is like there's a million companies creating their own MCP server, but less than a million companies even use MCP servers, right? Like this idea that the joke that basically like everybody's trying to create a market for something that nobody is necessarily trying to use or is even willing to knowledgeably learn well enough to use, right? And so I do think that the standardization is a problem. But a lot of the folks that I talk to that are part of the larger CTO networks, they're craving standardization because that's the world they live in. They don't live in this crazy ass world of like, hey, I'm going to give up VS Code for Antigravity tomorrow because it seems to be doing a much better job. And next week, I might give up Antigravity for something else because that's doing a much better job, right? The thing that I always joke about purposeful tinkering, you know, in regards to, hey, what is it that I can learn today that is going to make me faster and more efficient tomorrow? And so my thinking, and it's different from a lot of the guys that I talk to that are more at the higher end level engineering areas, is hey, stop trying to standardize everything. Stop trying to get all your people on the same page. Let your people experiment. Let your people kind of go out and figure shit out on their own. Give them a stipend basically to cover, say, however much in compute from whatever provider that they like or prefer, and let them just try it out. Let them experiment. You know, like I've had some amazing experience with Redux APIs when I was building my own Codex type tool. But as soon as Codex came out, like that didn't matter anymore because Codex did exactly what I was trying to do, but much better and faster because it's got the money and the backing, right? And then Anti-Gravity did a lot of the stuff that Codex can't do in terms of what we're seeing right here, right? Codex has a stopping point where it like, and I think a lot of that stopping point is for the sake of sparing OpenAI, and even I know some folks that use Claude Code have run into these sorts of issues where these companies don't actually keep going in most cases. That they'll stop when they feel like the model is having serious issues in order to save compute, right? Like no, we're not going to continue doing this even though it's failing. We're not going to try different things even though it's failing because we don't want to overuse our compute cycles on this particular issue because this particular issue. It's like their retry strategy is like 1 or 2 instead of like retry strategy 10. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah,
And so that
well, they're non-deterministic models, so there's
exactly
always going to, and so more retries reduces the probability of failure. But one thing I would say, just kind of as a sobering component, is we're in an AI renaissance.
yeah,
An incredible amount of capital is being pumped into AI development, and I expect that that will continue to some degree, but it's not going to be at this level forever. So right now
exactly.
it is definitely to our advantage to utilize newer, more effective tools as they become available, but we're also going to have to get more efficient with it as an industry as
Exactly.
time goes.
And I think that's kind of my takeaway from those sorts of discussions is don't try to standardize before there's even a real standard in play, right? Like stop seeking standardization when standardization is merely going to hamper you from being able to move forward. The thing that I was talking about earlier is I posted this video from the head of product at Lovable, and she made a really good point of like Lovable is pumping out is doing $100 million in revenue, and they might have had product market fit 3 months ago. They might have had product market fit this month or last month, but this month they don't feel like they have product market fit. Why? Because the industry is changing so rapidly that what was product market fit for their company a month ago is no longer product market fit. Meaning, like users don't care about what they were able to do a month ago. Users are now asking, "Hey, can you do what X, Y, and Z tools do within your user experience?" And so they're at this stage where they can't ever really get to a point where they feel confident that they have it in the bag, so to speak, that they know that they have their customers long term. They know that their customers could easily move to something else. And so this constant fear state of like, you know, where is next month's product market fit going to come from? Like what feature do we have to build now so that we can be ahead of the curve next month is the way that everybody needs to think about this industry, right? Whether it's picking the tools that you're using, like back in 2023, I was writing G1 using models, but not with any tooling, right? It was just like the back and forth interaction with existing models. And then the toolings came out and it made it easier, that in that particular respect. And so in my mind, like what is like instead of trying to predict the future of where this stuff is going, just based off of my own desire to predict the future, like nobody can really predict the future. So in my mind, I find that being willing and capable of just testing everything that you can get your hands on, trying everything out, that in my mind gives you a better predictor of the future. Because if something works for you, then you know it's going to probably work for everybody else. If something doesn't work for you, then you know it's a bad idea and you shouldn't proceed in that direction. And I know we're almost out of time, and this is probably not going to finish before we have time. We have to close this because I got meetings I got to prep for as well. But yeah, this is kind of what I wanted to kind of do, and I was hoping to get a little bit further along the way, but we had some hiccups. But what are your guys' thoughts on this approach? What are your guys' thoughts on this being sort of our initial demo for the folks that we talked about? Any concerns, any considerations, anything I should consider before we end the call?
Are we gonna have like an actual model behind this Kong API or Kong gateway that you're gonna hook up to so it can kind of play with it, or
I could probably do that. Like I said, like right now, the demo, the implementation I'm doing is just to see if it's just mocked and just to see if I can connect it. If we have time between
oh
now, does that make sense?
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you just want to like see like if you can connect like VS Code or
Yep.
something to it. Okay, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And so from my perspective, like I don't know what their backend is going to look like. I think it's if we have enough time between now and when the contract is signed or when the contract starts to ostensibly add a additional layer, maybe from a llama or something, that then I can kind of demonstrate a model actually running through the Kong instance. That would be great. But for now, I think good enough for me at least for today, is just getting it to where I can basically interact with it via something like VS Code or via something like Open Web UI or something like that Tommy mentioned. And then getting that way at least we show proficiency and also be able to show the manager. The manager is really the thing that's selling here, right? Like being able to manage API keys, being able to see the logs happening. Like that's the demo. That's the thing that I want to demo to them, for the sake of making sure that this contract is in the bag, so to speak, or that we do well in this contract. And I think we told them 2 to 3 months. I actually think we'll be able to get this thing out in like a month or so. But again, I'm giving enough of a buffer to sort of account for the fact that we don't know what their backend looks like. We don't know what their Azure environment looks like. It's there's a lot of question marks that will probably need to be asked. But right now, I want to close the deal. I want to move forward with it. And and then basically then on that first week, just do nothing but discovery, and be able to demo something to them on day one, so that they know that we're ahead of the curve on what we promised them. So
All that I would say, like the perceived stack right now, and it's not a mature stack, but what I see right now is, spooling up Open Web UI container. It targets the backend proxy service just built out. I'd probably open an ngrok tunnel and then host something on LM Studio or something like that, just to keep development costs at bay. One consideration, if you do go the Open Web UI route, there are plugins. They call them pipelines.
no,
There are a couple.
I've used it. I have
Okay.
the same
Okay,
server
so I
that
don't
this
have
is
to
running
tell you
on.
that.
Yeah, the
Yeah, I
same
mean,
server
just
that this is
telemetry.
running Open Web UI.
Telemetry would be one of the major considerations, just because the government sure does like their dashboards.
Yeah, exactly, and that's really sort of the goal here, is create a dashboard type system for them to be able to go in and essentially do their thing, look and see which users are using what within their API, which users are using how much compute. I mean, we can even get like Kong has plugins capabilities, so we can even like start tracking, like start calculating what the token usage is just based off of the API calls that are sent and that sort of thing. But that's a down the line kind of option. Before we go, I kind of wanted to show this real quick, so I didn't get a chance to talk about it. So the server that I was deploying this to actually has this running on it. So this is my little AI services one. This is also publicly available, which I'll share with you guys. But basically, it auto deploys. Oh, is this the right one? No, this is not the right one. Different one. Servers. There we go. So this one basically does a local server deploy, and so it has all of the different tools on that server. So that particular server is running N8N. It's running a web, text generation web UI, LibreChat, Comfy UI. And my goal with adding this, it's running LangGraph Studio, but it's also running Llama. My goal with this was just to get as many fun UI tools in Docker deploying as possible, so that I could kind of give it to my kids, give it to my son, let him play with it. The server has decent capacity, so we can run all of these all at the same time. And it's more of a playground for all these tools than anything else. So if y'all want, I can share this one with you guys as well. If you have a local box or an old box that you guys want to deploy this to, feel free to use it as well. So, any other questions before I let us out? Do you guys enjoy this? Do you think that
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty dope.
Awesome. Cool. All right. I'll
Take it easy.
share here. I'll share the link here, and then we'll catch up with you guys later on.
See ya.
All right, see you. Have a good one.
Bye bye.